All right, let's get to our guest line. If you happen to be watching us on QSportsTalk.com, you'll see our first guest today live and in person. Please be joined by Tim Kalinowski, betting analyst for Snapback Sports. He was out with us last year, back with us again here in 2024. Tim, thanks for coming on. How are you?
Doing well, guys. How are you? Happy to be here.
Before we get into it, do you want to you want to get in the DeLorean and hit 88 miles an hour and go back to last year, Steve?
We could do that
when he joined us.
I kind of lean under. It's really that stretch of Clemson at North Carolina at Florida State. Yeah, good luck. And then you hit the idle week, and it's a bunch of 50-50 games. So at that point, it's like you're really handicapping. Have they figured it out on offense? Like, I actually like Schrader more than a lot of people, but when the offensive line has turnover as well, you lose the heartbeat in Bergeron. It's like, Schrader is the type of guy where everything needs to go well, and I worry that margin for error is just a little too thin.
He had him at the under last year.
You had him at the under, and people had their pitchforks out when we got off the phone with you. They were not too happy, but you turned out to be right. Do you feel a little vindicated with the way things played out last year for Syracuse?
Well, look, I mean, I knew I was going to a hostile environment, and given that take, I expected the pushback, but I was just calling it how I saw it. It's going to be similar again this year. These kind of 50-50 games. With Syracuse, and it's like, it's been the same story. Momentum team early, and then the wheels kind of fall off. But I wasn't, I guess, happy to see it go that way. But I think something did need to happen, for a change, and to have Fran Brown in here, I think, is beyond exciting.
You were right on last year's team that the O-line was the problem, and that led to Schrader getting hurt, and the wheels fell off. So you were basically spot on with it.
Yeah, but look, I mean, Schrader, you should be able to, with a mobile quarterback, it should help alleviate things. But I mean, look, the top of the ACC was pretty tough last year, and it was just too many mismatches, unfortunately. But again, I think it's going to be a different story this year. I'm a little more giddy on him.
Yeah, is Kyle? How much of an improvement would you say Kyle McCord is to a Schrader?
I think he's a massive improvement. He kind of was the GOAT over there at Ohio State, and the GOAT, the old way you say GOAT, right? The bad thing. And I felt like that. It wasn't really too warranted, honestly. Like he was limited, but they also kind of made him limited. But he comes into a Syracuse offense where I think he's going to have the full keys and the ability to, run the offense. And I think that's a positive for Syracuse. Schrader was just too inconsistent with his injuries, throwing the ball. They need something that's stable. And I think that Kyle McCord can provide that. I mean, if you're doing it relative to Syracuse, it is a massive, massive get.
All right, so, Paulie asked you about the quarterback position, so you touched on that, but you said that you're a little giddy on Syracuse this year. Why is that? Give us the thumbnail sketch of what stands out to you about Fran Brown's team here in year one.
Well, first off, he's had, 7 months or whatever it's been, and he's already brought in one of the best recruiting classes Syracuse has seen in quite some time. It starts with talent, and we've all like to say, "Well, you're never going to get recruits to Syracuse. It's never going to happen. Like, it's a cold school." And Fran Brown just said, screw that. I'm going to find a way. I like when people try and find answers instead of lamenting about what all the issues are. And the talent he's brought in, including the transfers, I think it's just an immediate boost, and it makes them deeper. This is a Syracuse team that always has a couple names, and then they always seem to get hurt, and they're deeper now and able to overcome that. And to be able to do that early, there's a bunch of coaching situations across this country that a new guy came in, there was a mass exodus, and it's just going to be, year one, just throw it in the trash as the rebuilding year. But Syracuse, I think with the talent, it is an upgrade, a lot of what Fran Brown brought in. And that, to me, you bring in the number one recruiter in the nation on Georgia's staff, that alone should be some osmosis here.
All right, so we look at the schedule. We've talked a lot about this because we've had the whole summer to talk about this, obviously, and a lot has been made about the schedule, that there's no Clemson, there's no Florida State, there's no North Carolina. As you brought up, Tim, a lot of toss-up games, but it is not as difficult as it's been in past years. So with that being said, the upgrade in talent, the new coaching staff, the fresh perspective, the schedule that's not quite as daunting as it's been in years past, what do you think is possible for Syracuse here in year one?
I think 7 wins, bowl eligibility, possibly 8. The thing with me is, like, for instance, you look at Georgia Tech, right? To me, that's a toss-up game, but you have a Georgia Tech offense that brought back pretty much everybody. And my concern for Syracuse is just the fact that both coordinators don't have a ton of experience in game calling plays, and Brown as well. So college football, there's no preseason, obviously, right? So how quickly can you get out those kinks? It's really a see it to believe it type of thing. But look, I think they're more talented than Pitt. I think they're ahead of Boston College. I mean, Cal is a physical team, but hopefully you have it figured out by middle of November there. And so to me, that is kind of where this thing lies, right? Stanford, they returned a bunch of guys. Don't overlook them. It's, again, those 50-50s to me is all predicated on how quickly they can figure out game day operation.
This guy talks a lot of sense, Steve.
Yeah. Yeah, Tim, you're basically reciting what Paulie has said for the last several weeks. So he's a big fan of yours right now. Yep. He's a big fan of yours. All right, so we'll ask you the floor and ceiling question then. Why not, right? We've talked a lot about what is the floor, what is the ceiling. What is worst case scenario for Syracuse in 2024? What is best case scenario? I
think worst case is, say, 4 wins. It's a lot of close losses, and it's like, you know what, Brown just couldn't manage the clock late. They could, kind of those types of things. And then I think the ceiling is like that 8 wins, and then you possibly get an upset or 2. Virginia Tech comes there. I think that is totally on the table. Again, it's all about having not seen it yet. And but when you look at the roster, I mean, guys, how exciting is it to do a radio show in Syracuse and see names with parentheses next to them that say transfer from Texas A&M, transfer from Georgia. I mean, that alone, like, come on, this isn't some transfer from, Delaware, right? This is big dog stuff. And I think that talent, again, puts it at a ceiling at 9 wins possibly.
Yeah. All right. So we're on the same page, certainly, with that. All right. Let's look around the ACC, and I guess let's start with where Syracuse fits in the pecking order. It's middle of the pack. Is that fair to say? And then let's go from there. Give us like your top 5 teams in the ACC.
Yeah, I think Syracuse is in the middle of the pack there, and the ceiling. I always start with any sort of preview with just what you get dealt for a schedule, especially now with our Power 4 here. There's some teams like in the Big Ten that avoided all the top dogs, and you get that in the ACC as well. So Syracuse is a for sure schedule winner for me, and I would add in newcomer SMU. I'll kind of work my way up here. SMU newcomer, they got dealt a tremendous schedule, and this is a veteran team that returns guys on both sides of the ball, so I think they come in and compete right away. Virginia Tech is a team that returned a lot of guys. They figured out the quarterback. That's the most important part. Pretty much doubled their wins from last year. NC State's going to hang on the quarterback. Louisville's plucky. And then you got Clemson, Florida State, Miami at the top here. Miami, everyone is saying this is the year for Miami. I know we've been saying that they're kind of like a Texas back type team, but this Miami team, make no mistake, is absolutely freaking loaded. And they could be Syracuse could luck out in a situation where Miami is already, on their way to the ACC championship. And maybe that week, whatever it is, 12 game against Syracuse, Miami could be resting some guys. So that could be like a new NFL wrinkle here.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. And I guess along those lines, I was going to ask you about big picture with the college football playoff expanding. I've seen some projections out there talk about potentially 3 out of the ACC, Clemson, Florida State, Miami. That might be a little bit aggressive, but, do you think they could get up to 3 teams? And would it be those 3, or do you think like an NC State could slide in there?
Absolutely not. I don't think they're getting 3 teams. I think this is going to be the SEC Big Ten Invitational. It is. Gotcha. Anybody that has say anyone that we're comparing resumes with that is, let's talk about like an Ole Miss, for instance, who is a popular SEC dark horse. If we're comparing 2 or 3 loss Ole Miss to a 2 or 3 loss NC State, like, good luck. It's just not going to happen. And the Big 12 is in the same situation as well. Utah comes in as the best team in the Big 12 immediately. And I worry that they're going to have to go unblemished with a conference title in order to get in. And I feel that way with these ACC teams as well. Like, guys, it is the SEC and the Big Ten, and it's only I think going to get worse.
So do you think they could get multiple teams in, or are you just saying ACC is going to be a one-bid league regardless of what happens? Whoever wins the ACC championship's going no matter what.
I think 2 is on the table. And again, it has to look nice, right? Again, the ACC has to root for each other. So, Syracuse, I don't think is going to be in the mix for the playoffs, unfortunately, guys. But say if you're like a Clemson or a Florida State, you got to hope, Virginia Tech ended up having a great year. You got to hope, Miami had a great year. So to build up those resumes, you got to put on your conference hat a little more here.
Yeah, so Clemson and Miami both play Florida State, so I mean, it's not possible for Florida State and Miami or Clemson to be undefeated. It would have to be a one or the other type situation. So we'll see how that certainly plays out. When you look around the country, I mean, Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, 1, 2, 3 in the polls right now. Is there a team or two outside of that top 3 that you've got your eye on that you think is legitimate national title contender? Maybe you're picking them to win the national title.
Yeah, I mean, that 3, it's that 4 is in a class of their own. You throw in Texas to that mix, but I would add in like a Missouri or an Ole Miss. Missouri got dealt one of the best SEC schedules, and that offense was absolutely electric last year, and they bring a bunch of those guys back. So Missouri is a fun dark horse for me. I took them at a long shot to win the SEC and a longer shot to win the national championship. Tennessee as well, their offense took a bit of a step back last year, but they're still a 9-win team. I still think it's going to be one of those SEC or Big Ten teams, but don't look past Notre Dame as well. With this was probably one of the expanded playoff was basically meant for Notre Dame, and so they're if they take care of business, they're going to be in there. And there's this new kind of wrinkle, right, with the expanded playoff, the way the bracket shakes out. I can't, it's going to take too long to articulate, but basically someone in like the 5 and 6 range ends up getting a really good gig with the if they win their first game, right? It's like it's one of those weird the way they end up doing the bracket, like we're gonna find out that the best spot to be, I think, is in like either the 6 or 7 range. It's something like that to get the easier following game, because right, if you could get a weaker ACC or Big 12 champion that got one of those auto top 4s, then you're kind of cooking there.
Yeah, that's interesting. That is a good way to look at it. All right, we're running out of time here, but I do want to ask you about what is Snapback Sports. Tell our listeners how they can find your content.
Yeah, Snapback Sports. You can find it just Snapback Sports on all social media platforms. Snapback was started by a good friend of mine, Jack Settleman. He's kind of in the sports influencer game, and kind of his bread and butter was built off of going to stadiums and showcasing experiences on YouTube, and then on top of it, I'm in for betting analysis and analysis like sport, all sorts of sport. I do hockey as well, NFL. So doing that, it's going to be a lot of travel this fall. I'm heading out to Ireland in a couple of hours for week 0, and then it's Colorado, Tennessee, Alabama, Texas. It is a loaded schedule for me. So you can find us on all socials there. And I remember the first day I joined them a couple of weeks ago, I was like, wow, it's just a good decision to join this crew. And Jack was doing a one-on-one bit following Neymar around for the day. And I said, yeah, I think access to athletes like that is pretty good.
You said you're going to Ireland now. I have to ask a question now because that involves Syracuse. We've been talking multiple times if Syracuse was going to be favored going into the Georgia Tech game, and if Georgia Tech beat Florida State, first of all, is that possible to happen?
So quietly, I bet Georgia Tech on the money line. Just don't tell anyone, okay? Don't tell anyone. It's scary, but they have the offense. It's going to be one of those things. They have to score every time they touch the ball, and the offense it has enough continuity where I think it could happen. Crazy things happen in week 1.
All right, now let me ask you this. If Georgia Tech wins that game, what do you think the point spread going into a Syracuse game would be? And then also if they lose that game?
I think that Georgia Tech is going to be about a 4-point favorite at Syracuse.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's going to be a lot of reaction from what happens in this game, but that's where I would put it.
All right, that's about where we were.
We said about a field goal. Yeah. Okay. All right. We're
sharp guys over there.
That's good. Yeah, we try. All right, listen, Tim, this was a lot of fun. Thanks so much for coming on. Continued success to you. Have a great trip to Ireland, and hopefully we can have you on again in the not-too-distant future.
Thank you, guys. Excited for it.
All right, Tim Kalinowski.